The king's gaze lingered on her for exactly one heartbeat too long, and Jade Ashford knew her secret had already been discovered. She stood in the stone courtyard beneath a sky the color of slate, her hand pressed flat against her chest where linen bound her breasts tight enough to ache. Around her, 19 other recruits spoke the oath in voices roughened by nerves or youth or the chill morning air. She had practiced her own voice for months, pitching it lower, flattening the musicality her mother had once teased her about. The words came out steady enough. I swear my blade to the crown, my blood to the realm, my life to the watch. King Jasper Ivanovich did not blink. His eyes were the color of winter moonlight, pale and depthless, set in a face that might have been carved from marble. White hair fell past his shoulders, caught back with a silver clasp that bore the royal seal. He wore black from throat to boot, unadorned except for the signet ring on his right hand. He looked young, perhaps 30 in human years, but Jade had heard the stories. 3 centuries old, they said. Ancient enough to remember when this city had been farmland and forest. He moved down the line, accepting each recruit's oath with a slight inclination of his head. When he reached Jade, he stopped. His nostrils flared, just barely. His gaze tracked from her cropped hair down to the boots she had bought 2 sizes too large to make her stride heavier, more careless. Then he moved on. Jade released the breath she had been holding, slowly, through her nose. Her hands did not shake. She had not allowed them to shake in 20 years, not since the night she had hidden in a root cellar and watched through the slats as her village burned. She had been 5 years old enough to remember faces, old enough to remember the vampire elder who had given the order, his voice carrying clearly across the square as he told his soldiers to leave no structure standing. His name was Corvinus, and he sat on the king's war council now. Jade had spent 2 decades preparing to reach him. The oath ceremony ended. The captain of the guard, a grim-faced vampire named Lucian, who looked barely older than Jade's disguise, dismissed them to the barracks. Jade shouldered her pack and followed the others across the courtyard. The palace loomed above them, all gray stone and narrow windows, built in an age when fortification mattered more than beauty. Beneath it, rumor said, stretched a network of tunnels and archive chambers that held records dating back to the city's founding. That was what Jade needed. The archives, the muster rolls and campaign logs that would prove what Corvinus had done. The King's Guard barracks connected to the archive through a passage in the sub-level, accessible only to those who wore the royal crest. So Jade had cut her hair, learned to walk like a man, and spent 6 months working in the docks to build the muscle that would make her shoulders broad enough to pass inspection. The barracks smelled of leather and stone and old sweat. Jade claimed a bunk in the corner, as far from the others as she could manage. A recruit named Thomas, broad-shouldered and easy-smiling, tried to introduce himself. Jade grunted a response and turned away. She could not afford friends. Friends asked questions. Friends noticed things. That night, she lay awake listening to the sounds of 19 men sleeping around her. Her ribs hurt where the binding pressed. Her scalp itched where she had cropped her hair short with kitchen shears, uneven and rough. She thought about her mother's face, her father's hands, her little brother's laugh, all of them gone to ash because a vampire elder had decided their village was harboring a fugitive it had never seen. She would find the proof. She would bring it before the king. And Corvinus would pay. What Jade did not know, could not have known, was that the king already understood every detail of her deception and had chosen to let it play out. Jasper stood in his private study 3 floors above the barracks and watched the moon rise over the city. His hearing was acute enough to pick out individual heartbeats from the chambers below. Hers was slower than the others, more controlled. The heartbeat of someone who had trained themselves not to panic. He had known within the first hour. The scent had given her away initially beneath the leather and soap. She smelled of lavender and something warmer, distinctly female. Then there was her gait, carefully constructed but not quite right. Men carried their weight differently, pushed off from the heel rather than the ball of the foot. And her heartbeat had spiked when she met his eyes, a flutter of pure terror quickly suppressed. Most telling of all, he had seen her face before. Not in person, but in a report that had crossed his desk 6 months ago. A tavern owner in the dock district had mentioned a new worker, a young woman with dark hair and darker eyes, who asked too many questions about the palace guard. Jasper's spy master had included a sketch. The resemblance was unmistakable, even with the hair shorn and the feminine curves hidden. So he knew who she was. What he did not yet know was why she had come. He intended to find out. Jasper did not trust easily. 300 years of life had taught him that trust was a luxury immortals could not afford. His shield brother, his closest companion for 3 centuries, had sold him to a rival faction 60 years ago. Jasper still carried the scars from that betrayal, thin white lines across his ribs where silver blades had carved him open. He had executed the traitor himself, but the wound to his heart had never fully healed. Since then, he had kept his guard at a distance. He had counselors, soldiers, servants, but no one he allowed behind him. No one he relied on. It was safer that way. Still, the girl intrigued him. It took courage to walk into a vampire's court wearing a lie. It took desperation. He wanted to understand both. He would watch. He would wait. And when she made her move, he would be ready. The first week in the guard nearly broke Jade's resolve. Training began before dawn and lasted until long past dusk. They drilled with swords until her palms blistered, then drilled with pikes until her shoulders screamed. Captain Lucien did not differentiate between vampire and human recruits. He drove them all with the same relentless precision. Jade had thought herself strong from her months at the docks, but this was different. This was war training, designed to forge soldiers who could stand against supernatural threats. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. When the others joked in the mess hall, she ate quickly and left. When they sparred, she held back just enough to seem competent, but not exceptional. She could not afford to stand out. But she was lonely. God, she was lonely. She had not spoken to another woman in months. She missed her friend Kira, who had helped her cut her hair and sworn to keep her secret. She missed the sound of women's laughter, the easy camaraderie she had once taken for granted. And she was frightened, not of the training or the work, but of the king. He watched her. She felt his gaze during drills, during inspections, during the rare moments she crossed the courtyard while he stood on the balcony above. He never spoke to her directly, never singled her out, but the weight of his attention was unmistakable. Did he know? Or was she imagining it? Paranoia born of guilt. She could not tell, and that uncertainty gnawed at her. The breakthrough came 3 weeks into her service. Jade had been assigned to night watch, a 4-hour shift walking the palace perimeter. It was dull work, mind-numbing in its repetition, but it gave her time to think and to explore. The archive entrance was in the east wing, behind a door marked with the royal seal. Jade had studied the palace layout obsessively before her recruitment, memorizing every public map she could find. But maps did not show guard rotations or locked doors, and she needed both. She was testing the handle locked, as expected, when a voice spoke behind her. "Lost, recruit?" Jade spun. The king stood 3 paces away, hands clasped behind his back. He wore the same black attire, though without the formal coat. In the dim torchlight, his skin seemed to glow, pale and flawless. His eyes reflected the flame like a cat's. Jade's heart hammered. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to keep her voice level. "No, Your Majesty. I was investigating a sound." A sound. His tone was mild, almost amused. "And did you find the source?" "No, sire." He stepped closer. Jade held her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to run. Vampires were faster than humans, stronger, nearly impossible to kill. If he chose to strike her down, she would not even see the blow coming. But he did not strike. He simply studied her, his expression unreadable. "You are new to the guard." "Yes, sire." "And you volunteered. Most humans are conscripted." It was not a question, but his inflection suggested he expected an answer. Jade had prepared for this. "I wanted to serve the crown, sire." "Admirable." He tilted his head slightly, a gesture that reminded her of a wolf scenting prey. "What is your name?" She had practiced this too. The false name, the flat effect. "Jace, sire. Jace Ashford." "Jace." He repeated the name slowly, as though tasting it. "Tell me, Jace, why were you truly testing that door?" Her throat went dry. "I heard, 'Do not lie to me.'" His voice remained soft, but there was steel beneath it now. I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell your fear, and I have no patience for dishonesty. Jade's mind raced. She could run, but he would catch her. She could fight, but she would lose. She could tell the truth, but the truth would end everything. So she gambled. I am looking for records, she said quietly, from 20 years ago, a village called Millbrook, burned during the border campaigns. The king's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Why? It was my home. Silence stretched between them. Jade waited for him to call for the guards, to have her dragged away. Instead, he stepped past her and placed his hand on the archive door. It swung open beneath his touch, the lock disengaging with a soft click. The records you seek are in the third sublevel, he said. Campaign logs filed by year and region. You will need a lamp. The lower chambers have no windows. Jade stared at him. You are helping me. I am allowing you to find what you came for. He met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something almost human in his face. Weariness, perhaps, or recognition. But understand this, Jace Ashford. If you endanger my people or my kingdom, I will end you without hesitation. And if you lie to me again, I will know. He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the stone floor. Jade stood alone in the corridor, her hands trembling. She did not understand what had just happened. The king knew she was lying about her name, about her gender, probably about everything, and yet he had opened the door. Why? She did not have an answer, but she was not fool enough to waste the opportunity. She descended into the archives with a lamp in one hand and her questions clutched tight in her chest. The archives smelled of old paper and dust and something faintly metallic that might have been blood. Jade moved carefully through the narrow aisles, her lamp casting wild shadows on the walls. The records were meticulously organized, sorted by decade and region. She found the border campaigns easily enough, thick ledgers bound in cracked leather. Millbrook appeared in the logs from 20 years ago, listed under pacification actions. The entry was brief, clinical. Village suspected of harboring fugitive operative, full suppression authorized, commanding officer Elder Corvinus. Jade's hands shook as she read. There it was, proof that Corvinus had given the order. But it was not enough. The entry listed Millbrook as a legitimate military target, suspected of treason. Without evidence to the contrary, the destruction was justifiable under wartime law. She needed more. She needed the investigation records, the testimonies, something to prove her village had been innocent. She searched for hours, pulling ledger after ledger, reading until her eyes burned. And finally, buried in a file marked Disputed Actions, she found it. A report from a junior officer, filed 3 months after the burning. It stated clearly that no fugitive had ever been found, no evidence of collaboration uncovered. The village had been destroyed on a rumor, nothing more. The report recommended censure for Corvinus. It was signed by a captain named Soren, and it had been marked dismissed for lack of standing. Jade copied the report in careful script, her handwriting cramped and uneven in the dim light. This was what she needed. This was the proof that would bring Corvinus down. She was so focused on her work that she did not hear the footsteps until they were almost upon her. So, a spy after all. Jade spun. A vampire stood in the aisle behind her, tall and coldly handsome, with the same pale skin and white hair that marked his kind. But his eyes were different, cruel, calculating. She recognized him from the council chambers. Corvinus. Her hand went to the knife at her belt, a pathetic gesture. A blade would not save her from a vampire. Corvinus smiled. Did you think the king would protect you? He does not care about one human girl playing soldier. He has already forgotten you exist. Then why are you here? Jade asked. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Because I do not forget. He stepped closer, and Jade smelled ash and old blood. I remember every village, every burning, every face, and I remember Millbrook, a nest of traitors, all of them, including, it seems, their children. He lunged. Jade threw herself sideways, knocking over a stack of ledgers. Corvinus moved like smoke, faster than her eye could follow. His hand closed around her throat, lifting her off the ground. She kicked uselessly, her vision already darkening. "You should have stayed dead with the rest of them," Corvinus hissed. And then he was gone, ripped away from her by a force that sent him crashing into the far wall. Jade fell to her knees, gasping. Through the tears in her eyes, she saw the king standing between her and Corvinus, his posture relaxed, but his eyes burning with cold fury. "Touch her again," Jasper said softly, "and I will hang you in the courtyard at dawn." Corvinus rose, brushing dust from his coat. "She is a spy, Your Majesty, an infiltrator. I found her stealing records. She is a member of my guard, investigating a matter I authorized." The king's voice was flat, absolute. "You entered my archives without permission and assaulted one of my soldiers. That is treason, Corvinus." "Treason?" Corvinus laughed, but the sound was strained. "You would accuse me, who has served this kingdom for 500 years, over a human girl. I would accuse you of many things." Jasper moved forward, and even Jade, still struggling to breathe, felt the weight of his power. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing down like a physical force. Unauthorized destruction of civilian holdings, falsification of military records, and now assault on a royal guard. Corvinus's smile faded. "You have no proof. I have her testimony. And I have this." Jasper gestured, and Jade realized he held the report she had been copying, the one signed by Captain Soren. "Your own officer's investigation, which you suppressed. That alone is grounds for removal from the council." For a long moment, Corvinus simply stared. Then his expression twisted into something ugly. "You are making a mistake, Jasper. There are others who remember how to rule with strength, not sentiment. This girl is nothing. She will die in a human span while you remain, and you will regret wasting your authority on her memory." "Perhaps." Jasper's tone did not change. "But that is my choice to make. Leave. Now." Corvinus left, his footsteps echoing back up the stairs. Only when the sound faded completely did Jasper turn to Jade. She was still kneeling on the floor, her throat bruised, her lamp overturned and leaking oil. He crouched in front of her, his movements careful, non-threatening. "Can you stand?" Jade nodded. She did not trust her voice yet. He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His skin was cool, smooth, inhumanly perfect. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. "You should not have come here alone," he said. "You told me where the records were." Her voice came out rough, scraped raw. I did not tell you to come immediately, without backup in the middle of the night." He released her hand and stepped back. "Corvinus has suspected you since the oath ceremony. He has been watching you as closely as I have." Jade's heart sank. "Then I have failed. You have found what you came for." He nodded toward the copied report. "That is not failure. But I cannot use it now. If I bring charges, he will reveal what I am. The guard will expel me, and I will have no standing to testify." Jasper was silent for a moment. Then he said, "What if you had standing as yourself?" She looked at him, confused. "The records do not lie," he continued. "Millbrook was destroyed unjustly. You are a survivor, the daughter of the village headman. Your testimony, combined with Captain Soren's report, would be sufficient to bring Corvinus before a tribunal." "I am a woman," Jade said flatly. "I lied to enter the guard. I have no credibility. You are a citizen of this realm who uncovered evidence of a war crime." Jasper's eyes were steady on hers. "And you did so with more courage and resourcefulness than most of my soldiers show in a lifetime. That will carry weight. Why are you doing this?" The question burst out of her, raw and desperate. "You knew what I was from the beginning. You could have expelled me, arrested me, anything. Instead, you helped me. Why?" Jasper was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Because I understand betrayal, and I understand the need for justice, even when the cost is high." He turned and began walking toward the stairs. Over his shoulder he added, "Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we will discuss what comes next." Jade stood alone in the ruined archive, her throat aching and her mind reeling. She had come here expecting to find a monster on the throne. Instead, she had found something far more complicated. She had found a man who saw her, who knew her, who chose to help her anyway, and God help her, she was beginning to care about him. The next morning, Jasper summoned Jade to his private study. She went in her guard uniform, the binding still tight around her ribs, her hair still cropped short. But the pretense felt hollow now. He knew. He had always known. The study was smaller than she expected, lined with books and maps. A fire burned low in the hearth. Jasper stood by the window, looking out over the city. He did not turn when she entered. "Sit," he said. Jade sat in the chair nearest the fire. Her body ached from training, from the fight, from 3 weeks of sleeping in a bunk too short for her frame. She was so tired. "I have been considering your situation," Jasper said, "and I believe there is a way forward if you are willing to take it." "I am listening." He turned to face her. Corvinus is not working alone. He has allies on the council, vampires who believe as he does that humans are tools, expendable and easily replaced. They have been consolidating power for years, and I have been unable to move against them without proof of wrongdoing. And now you have proof. Now I have proof of one crime, committed 20 years ago. It is not enough to dismantle a faction. He crossed to the desk and picked up a sheaf of papers. But if Corvinus believes you are a threat, he will act against you, and when he does, his allies will reveal themselves. Jade's stomach dropped. "You want to use me as bait? I want to give you the choice to help me finish what you started." Jasper set the papers down and met her gaze. "Corvinus will not let this go. He knows you have seen the records, and he knows I am protecting you. He will try to discredit you, to have you removed from the guard or worse. If we move carefully, we can turn his attacks against him. And if we fail, then we both pay the price." His expression was grave. "I will not lie to you, Jade. This is dangerous. You could lose your life. But if we succeed, we will break a faction that has caused suffering for decades. We will bring justice not just for Millbrook, but for every village like it." Jade thought of her mother's face, her father's laugh, her brother's small hand in hers. She thought of the flames and the screaming and the terrible silence that came after. She had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. She could not walk away now. "Tell me what you need me to do." Jasper nodded slowly. "First, you will continue your service in the guard, but you will also attend council sessions as my scribe. It is a minor position, but it will give you access to meetings where Corvinus and his allies speak freely. You will listen, and you will remember. You want me to spy. I want you to observe." He hesitated, then added, "And I want you to trust me. This will not be easy. Corvinus will come for you, and when he does, you must not act alone. Do you understand?" Jade met his gaze. Those pale, inhuman eyes had seen centuries pass. They had witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth and death of countless mortals. And yet, when he looked at her, she felt seen in a way she had never experienced before. "I understand," she said. "Good." He crossed to a cabinet and withdrew a small vial of dark liquid. "This is a healing draft. It will help with the bruising on your throat, and it will ensure you can continue training without arousing suspicion." Jade took the vial. Their fingers brushed, and she felt a shock of warmth. He pulled back quickly, as though burned. "Thank you," she said quietly. Jasper inclined his head. "You may go." Jade stood, but paused at the door. "Your Majesty? Why did you say you understand betrayal?" His expression closed, became unreadable. "That is a story for another time." She left, but the question lingered in her mind. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm. Jade trained with the guard by day, her body growing stronger and harder. She learned to move in armor, to fight in formation, to stand watch through the coldest hours of the night. The other recruits began to accept her as one of their own. Thomas, the broad-shouldered recruit who had tried to befriend her on the first day, started saving her a seat at meals. A vampire soldier named Alara taught her a trick for sharpening blades that made the edge last twice as long. Jade still kept her distance, but it was harder now. These people were becoming her comrades, and lying to them felt more painful with each passing day. By night, she attended council sessions in a scribe's robe, sitting in the corner with a lap desk and fresh parchment. She wrote quickly, capturing the debates over trade routes and tax levies and border patrols, and she listened. Corvinus sat on the king's left, his expression perpetually disdainful. He spoke rarely, but when he did, others listened. There were 3 other vampires who deferred to him: Lady Morrigan, an elegant creature with a voice like silk and eyes like a snake; Lord Draven, who wore his cruelty openly and seemed to enjoy watching others squirm; and Elder Theron, ancient and frail-looking, though Jade suspected the frailty was an act. They never spoke openly of treason, but Jade began to notice patterns. Corvinus would propose moving troops away from the capital, always with a reasonable justification. Morrigan would suggest appointing loyal allies to key positions. Draven would dismiss concerns about human settlements, calling them expendable resources. And Theron would nod, his milky eyes half-closed, lending the weight of his age to their arguments. Jasper countered them carefully, never giving ground but never forcing a confrontation. He was patient, methodical, impossibly controlled. Jade found herself watching him more than the others. The way he listened, his focus absolute. The way he spoke, each word chosen with precision. The way he held himself, regal and remote, allowing no one close. He was lonely, she realized, as lonely as she was. The thought unsettled her. One night, after a particularly contentious council session, Jasper dismissed the others but asked Jade to remain. When the chamber emptied, he gestured for her to approach the table. "What have you observed?" he asked. Jade set down her writing materials and chose her words carefully. "Corvinus is moving pieces into place, troops, allies, resources, but I cannot determine what he is planning." "A coup," Jasper said simply. "Time to coincide with the spring border muster, when most of my loyal forces will be deployed away from the capital." Jade's blood ran cold. "You know this?" "I suspect it, but suspicion is not proof." He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, she saw the weight of his centuries in the lines of his face. "Corvinus believes I am weak because I value human life, because I enforce laws rather than ruling by fear. He thinks compassion is a flaw." "Is it?" The question slipped out before Jade could stop it. Jasper smiled, a fleeting expression that was gone almost before it registered. "Ask me again in a century." "I do not have a century." "No." His smile faded. "You do not." They looked at each other across the table. The fire crackled in the hearth. Somewhere in the palace, a clock chimed midnight. "Why do you protect humans?" Jade asked. "Most vampires see us as cattle." "Most vampires are fools." Jasper stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "Humans are fragile, yes, short-lived, but you are also adaptable, creative, resilient in ways my kind has forgotten. A kingdom built only on immortal pride is a kingdom that stagnates and dies." "You speak as though you care about us." "I care about my kingdom, and my kingdom includes you." He glanced back at her. "Besides, I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched cities burn and forests grow where palaces once stood. Everything ends, Jade, even immortals. The only question is what we leave behind." Jade thought of Millbrook, of the ashes and the silence. Corvinus left behind only ruin. "Yes." Jasper's voice was soft. "And that is why he must be stopped." They stood together in the quiet, and Jade felt something shift between them. It was not attraction, not yet, or perhaps it was, and she was simply too afraid to name it. But it was connection, a recognition that they were both fighting the same battle, alone for too long. "I should return to the barracks," Jade said finally. Jasper nodded. "Be careful. Corvinus is watching you." "I know." As she reached the door, he spoke again. "Jade, that is your real name, is it not?" She froze, then slowly she turned back. "Yes. It suits you better than Jace." She did not know what to say to that, so she simply inclined her head and left. That night, lying in her bunk, Jade allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to tell the truth, to stand before the guard as herself, not a disguise, to let her hair grow, to shed the binding, to speak in her own voice, to be seen, fully and completely, by the king, whose gaze already burned through her careful walls. It was a dangerous fantasy, but she held it close as she drifted into sleep. The crisis came 3 weeks later, exactly as Jasper had predicted. Jade was on watch, walking the palace perimeter in the hour before dawn. The sky was still dark, the stars bright and cold. She heard the commotion before she saw its shouts, the clash of steel, the guttural snarls of vampires in combat. She ran toward the sound, drawing her sword. The courtyard was chaos. 2 factions of guards fought each other, vampires against vampires, and in the center of the melee stood Corvinus, his blade slick with blood. "Traitor!" he shouted, pointing at Jade as she skidded to a halt. "She is a spy, sent to undermine the crown. Arrest her." Half the guards turned toward Jade. She recognized them, Corvinus's allies, vampires she had noted during her weeks of observation. They advanced with weapons drawn. Jade backed up, her mind racing. She could not fight a dozen vampires. She could barely fight one. But if she ran, she would confirm Corvinus's accusation. And then Jasper was there, stepping between Jade and the advancing soldiers with an authority that stopped them in their tracks. "Stand down," he ordered. Corvinus laughed, wild and harsh. "You see? The king protects his pet spy. He has been compromised, turned by a human whore." Jasper's expression did not change, but the temperature in the courtyard plummeted. Frost crept across the stones. Jade's breath misted in the air. "I am going to give you one chance to withdraw that statement," Jasper said softly. Corvinus spat on the ground. "I withdraw nothing. You are unfit to rule, Jasper. You have grown soft, weak, distracted by mortal sentiment. The council has voted. You are deposed. The council does not have that authority. The council has the authority we claim." Corvinus gestured, and more soldiers emerged from the shadows, not palace guards, but mercenaries, hired fighters with no loyalty to the crown. "And we have the strength to enforce it." Jasper surveyed the courtyard, his gaze cold and calculating. Jade could see him counting opponents, assessing positions. They were outnumbered 3-1. "Jade," Jasper said quietly, not taking his eyes off Corvinus. "Get behind me." She wanted to argue, to insist she could fight, but she was not fool enough to think her pride mattered more than survival. She moved to his back, her sword raised, her heart hammering. "Loyal guards to your king!" Jasper's voice rang across the courtyard, a command that resonated with power. And they came. Thomas, the human recruit who had befriended her. Ilara, the vampire soldier who had taught her to sharpen blades. Captain Lucian, grim-faced and lethal. A dozen others, humans and vampires both, forming a circle around Jasper and Jade. It was not enough. But it was something. Corvinus's smile widened. "How touching. You have a few loyal dogs. It will not save you." He attacked. The courtyard exploded into violence. Jade had trained for weeks, but this was different, real combat, life and death, no rules and no mercy. She parried a blow from a mercenary and barely avoided the counterstrike. Thomas appeared at her side, his sword flashing, and together they drove the attacker back. "Stay close," he shouted. Jade did not have breath to answer. She fought with everything she had, her training taking over, muscle memory guiding her blade. Around her, the loyal guards held the line, but they were being pushed back, overwhelmed by superior numbers. And in the center of it all, Jasper fought Corvinus. It was not a human fight. They moved too fast, struck too hard, their blades ringing with impacts that would have shattered steel. Jasper was faster, more skilled, but Corvinus was vicious, willing to sacrifice defense for offense. Blood sprayed black in the dim light, vampire blood. Jade could not tell whose. A mercenary broke through the line, lunging for Jade's exposed side. She twisted, too slow, and knew the blow would land. It never did. Jasper was there, impossibly fast, his blade intercepting the strike. He did not look at her, but his voice was sharp. "I told you to stay behind me." "I am trying," Jade gasped. He spun, driving the mercenary back, and Corvinus seized the opening. His blade scored across Jasper's ribs, cutting deep. Jasper staggered, and Corvinus lunged for the kill. Jade moved without thinking. She threw herself forward, her sword raised, and caught Corvinus's blade on her own. The impact jarred her to the bone, but she held. Corvinus stared at her, shock and fury mingling on his face. "You dare?" "I dare," Jade said, and she did not recognize her own voice, raw, fierce, unafraid. Jasper recovered, his hand pressed to his bleeding side. "Jade, move!" But she did not move. She held her ground, her blade locked against Corvinus's, and she met his eyes without flinching. "You burned my village," she said. "You killed my family, and you will pay for it." Corvinus snarled and shoved her back. She fell hard, her sword skittering away. He raised his blade for the killing blow, and Jasper tore out his throat. It happened so fast, Jade almost missed it. One moment, Corvinus was standing over her. The next, Jasper had him by the neck, his fingers digging into flesh, ripping through muscle and sinew. Corvinus made a choked, gurgling sound. His sword fell from his hand. Jasper held him there, bleeding and dying, and spoke clearly enough for everyone in the courtyard to hear. "This is the price of treason. This is the price of harming what is mine." He released Corvinus, and the elder collapsed, twitching. Within moments he stilled. The courtyard fell silent. The mercenaries, seeing their leader dead, dropped their weapons. Corvinus's allies on the council stood frozen, their faces pale with terror. Jasper turned to them. "You have one chance to swear renewed loyalty, or you can join him." Lady Morrigan knelt first, her head bowed. Lord Draven followed, then Elder Theron. One by one the conspirators knelt and spoke the oath of fealty. Jasper accepted it without expression. Then he turned to Jade, still sprawled on the ground, and offered his hand. "Can you stand?" Jade took his hand and let him pull her upright. Her whole body shook with adrenaline. "Did we win?" "We survived. That is close enough." He swayed slightly, his hand still pressed to his bleeding side. "You are hurt," Jade said. "I will heal. But we need to secure the palace. Captain Lucian." Lucian stepped forward, bloodied but unbroken. "Your Majesty, arrest Corvinus's allies. Hold them in the cells until I decide what to do with them. And send runners to the border muster, recall the troops. I want every loyal soldier back in the capital within the week." "Yes, sire." As the captain moved to obey, Jasper turned back to Jade. His pale eyes searched her face. "You stepped in front of a vampire elder to protect me." "You stepped in front of a dozen mercenaries to protect me," Jade countered. "That is different. I am immortal. And I am expendable." "No." The word came out fierce, almost angry. "You are not expendable. You are—" He stopped, seeming to catch himself. "We will discuss this later. For now, go to the healers. That is an order." Jade wanted to argue, but the look on his face brooked no defiance. She nodded and turned toward the infirmary. As she walked away, she heard Thomas mutter to Alara, "Did the king just call her mine?" "He did," Alara replied, sounding amused. Jade kept walking, but her heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with the fight. The healers cleaned her wounds, mostly bruises and shallow cuts, and sent her back to the barracks to rest. But Jade could not sleep. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying the fight in her mind. Jasper had killed for her, had called her his, had looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch, and she had thrown herself between him and a blade, willing to die to protect him. When had that happened? When had the vampire king, cold and remote, become someone she cared about enough to die for? She thought about the nights in the archive, the quiet conversations in his study, the way he listened when she spoke, as though her words mattered, the way he had given her the tools to seek justice, not because he owed her anything, but because he believed she deserved it. She thought about his loneliness, the careful walls he kept around himself, the shield brother who had betrayed him, the trust he no longer gave. And she thought about the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and breakable and fierce all at once. God help her. She was falling in love with him. The realization settled over her like a weight, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She could not love him. He was immortal, a king, a creature of shadow and blood. She was human, fleeting, disguised as someone she was not. It was impossible. And yet, Jade closed her eyes and let herself imagine a different world, one where she stood before him as herself, no lies between them, one where his hand on hers was not duty or strategy, but choice. It was a dangerous dream, but she held it close until dawn. Jasper did not summon her for 3 days. Jade spent the time in a haze of training and waiting, unable to focus on anything but the question of what came next. Corvinus was dead, the coup had failed, but the faction he represented still existed, and Jade's role in the fight had been witnessed by dozens of guards. How long before someone asked why the king protected a lowly recruit with such ferocity? On the 4th day, Captain Lucien found her during drills. "The king requests your presence, now." Jade followed him through the palace, her stomach tight with nerves. They did not go to the study. Instead, Lucien led her to the throne room, a vast chamber with vaulted ceilings and tall windows that let in the gray morning light. Jasper sat on the throne, looking every inch the monarch. He wore formal robes, black and silver, and a circlet of silver rested on his white hair. Around the room stood members of the council, the guard, and various court officials. This was not a private meeting. This was a public audience. Jade's heart sank. He was going to expose her. He was going to reveal her deception in front of everyone. "Recruit Jace Ashford," Jasper said, his voice formal and carrying. "Step forward." Jade did, her legs unsteady. She stopped at the base of the dais and knelt as protocol demanded. "You have served in my guard for 2 months," Jasper continued. "In that time, you have demonstrated courage, skill, and loyalty beyond measure. 3 nights ago, you stood against a coup that sought to destroy this kingdom. You fought at my side, and you saved my life." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Jade kept her eyes on the floor, too afraid to look up. "Such service deserves recognition," Jasper said. "But before I can grant it, there is a matter we must address." Here it comes, Jade thought. "Recruit Ashford, you entered my guard under false pretenses. Is this true?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You lied about your identity. Is this true?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "And yet, the cause you pursued was just. You sought evidence of a war crime committed against your family and your home. Is this true?" Jade's head snapped up. Jasper was looking at her, his expression unreadable but his eyes steady. "Yes, Your Majesty," she said. "Then I propose we dispense with the lies." He stood, descending the dais. "Tell this court your true name." Jade rose slowly. Her hands were shaking. She looked around the room at the council members, at the guards, at the strangers who would judge her. And then she looked at Jasper, who nodded once, a gesture of permission and support. She took a breath. "My name is Jade Ashford. I am the daughter of the head man of Millbrook. 20 years ago, Elder Corvinus ordered my village burned. I came to this court to find proof of his crime and to seek justice for my family." The room erupted in whispers. Jade stood tall, forcing herself not to flinch. Jasper raised a hand and silence fell. "Jade Ashford has presented evidence that Corvinus acted without proper authority, destroying a civilian settlement on unsubstantiated charges. This evidence has been reviewed by the council and found credible. As of this morning, all charges against the village of Millbrook have been dismissed. The village is declared innocent and reparations will be paid to the survivors." Jade's breath caught. Reparations. Justice. It was more than she had dared hope for. "Furthermore," Jasper continued, "Jade Ashford's actions in service to this kingdom demonstrate the qualities I value most in my guards: courage, resourcefulness, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Therefore, I am offering her a formal position, not as a recruit, not as a soldier in the ranks." He turned to face her fully, and his next words rang through the chamber. "I am offering her the position of first shield, my personal guard, the one who stands at my back." The room went silent. Jade stared at him, unable to process what she had just heard. First Shield was a position of legend. It had not been filled in over a century, not since Jasper's shield brother had betrayed him. It was the highest honor a guard could receive, a role of absolute trust. "The position is yours if you will take it," Jasper said quietly. "As yourself. No disguises, no lies, just you, Jade Ashford." Tears burned at the corners of Jade's eyes. She blinked them back, unwilling to cry in front of the court. "I accept, Your Majesty." "Then kneel." She knelt again, and Jasper drew his sword. The blade was ancient, etched with runes that glowed faintly in the light. He rested it on her shoulder. "Jade Ashford, I name you first shield of the realm. You will guard my life with yours. You will stand at my back in battle and in peace. You will be my trusted companion, bound to me by oath and by honor." "I swear it," Jade said, and her voice did not shake. Jasper lifted the blade and sheathed it. Then he offered his hand and she took it, letting him pull her to her feet. The court erupted in applause. Jade stood beside the king, her hand still in his, and for the first time in 20 years, she felt whole. After the ceremony, Jasper dismissed the court and led Jade to his private study. Only when the door closed behind them did he finally let his careful control slip. He leaned against the desk, his hand going to his side where Corvinus had wounded him. "You are still hurt," Jade said, alarmed. "It is healing, slowly." He managed a faint smile. "Vampire healing is efficient, but not instantaneous." Jade crossed to him, her hands hovering uncertainly. "Should I call a healer?" "No, I will be fine." He looked at her and the smile faded. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For using you as bait, for putting you in danger, for—" He stopped, seeming to search for words. "For knowing what you were and allowing you to continue the deception. I should have confronted you immediately. If you had, I would not have found the evidence I needed." Jade met his gaze. "And Corvinus would still be alive, plotting his next move. You gave me the chance to finish what I started. I am grateful. You could have died. So could you." She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint lines of pain around his eyes. "Why did you name me First Shield? You have not filled that position in a century." Jasper was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost vulnerable. "Because I trust you. And because when you stepped in front of Corvinus to protect me, I realized something." "What?" "That I do not want to stand alone anymore." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness that made her breath catch. "I have spent 60 years building walls, keeping everyone at a distance, but you climbed those walls without even trying. You saw me, Jade, not the king, not the immortal, just me." Jade's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "I see you," she whispered. "And I see you. The girl who survived when her world burned. The woman who disguised herself as a soldier to seek justice. The warrior who stood against an elder vampire without flinching." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You are extraordinary. I am human, fragile, mortal. You are fierce and brave, and you make me want to be more than the cold, detached king I have become." He leaned closer, and she could feel the coolness of his breath against her skin. "Tell me to stop, and I will." Jade did not tell him to stop. Instead, she closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, a question as much as an answer. But then his hand slid into her short hair, cradling the back of her head, and the kiss deepened. He tasted like winter and starlight, cold and bright and utterly intoxicating. Jade's hands found his shoulders, gripping the fabric of his robe, anchoring herself against the dizzying rush of sensation. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jasper rested his forehead against hers. "This is madness," he murmured. "I know. You will age, you will die, and I will remain. I know." Jade pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "But I am here now, and so are you. Is that not enough?" Jasper looked at her for a long moment, his expression torn between longing and fear. Then he kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no doubt. Just the two of them, finding something in each other that neither had expected to find. When they finally separated, Jasper's hand remained on her waist, holding her close. "I cannot promise you forever," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for forever. I am asking for now. Now, I can give you." He smiled, a real smile, warm and unguarded. "Stay with me, Jade, for as long as you have." "I will," she promised. And in that moment, in the quiet of his study with the city sprawling below them, it felt like enough. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Jade's life. She moved into quarters adjacent to the king's chambers, a suite that was far grander than anything she had ever known. She trained daily with the elite guards, honing her skills to match the responsibilities of her new position. And she stood at Jasper's back during council meetings, her presence a silent reminder that the king was no longer alone. The court adjusted to the change with varying degrees of grace. Some of the older vampires muttered about the impropriety of a human-first shield. Others, particularly those who had seen her fight during the coup, treated her with wary respect. Jade did not care what they thought. She cared about the work, about protecting the realm, about standing beside the man who had given her the chance to be herself. And she cared about Jasper. They were careful in public, maintaining the proper distance between king and guard. But in private, they shed those roles. He taught her about the history of the kingdom, the centuries of politics and war that had shaped it. She told him about her childhood, the small joys of village life that had been lost in the fire. They sparred in the training yard, and he was merciless, pushing her to her limits. They walked in the palace gardens at night, when the moon turned the white roses silver. They sat together in his study, reading in companionable silence, occasionally reaching across the space between their chairs to touch hands. It was not perfect. Jade still woke sometimes from nightmares of the burning, and Jasper still carried the scars of his betrayal, but they were healing, together. 6 months after the coup, Jade stood on the palace balcony and watched the sun set over the city. Behind her, she heard Jasper approach, his footsteps silent as always. "You are thinking too loudly," he said, resting his hands on the balcony rail beside hers. Jade smiled. "I am thinking about the future. A dangerous pastime. I know." She glanced at him. "But I cannot help it. I keep wondering what comes next. The council is stable. The realm is at peace. Corvinus's faction is broken. We have achieved what we set out to do. And that troubles you? It makes me wonder what I am still doing here." The words came out softer than she intended. "I came for justice. I found it. Perhaps it is time for me to step down, to let you name a first shield who will serve you for centuries instead of decades." Jasper turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Is that what you want?" "No." Jade's throat tightened. "But I do not want to be selfish. You deserve someone who can stand beside you for as long as you reign." "Jade." He took her hands in his grip firm and grounding. "I have lived for 3 centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. And in all that time, I have never met anyone I trusted the way I trust you. I do not care if we have 50 years or 5. I want you beside me for as long as you are willing to stay." "I am willing," she whispered. "But what happens when I grow old? When my hair turns gray and my hands shake and I can no longer hold a sword? Then I will cherish you for who you are, not what you can do." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "You are not valuable to me because you are a warrior, Jade. You are valuable because you are you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Jasper wiped them away with his thumbs, his expression tender. "I love you," he said simply. "I did not think I could love again, not after what happened. But you proved me wrong. You gave me back something I thought I had lost, and I will treasure every moment we have, for as long as we have them." "I love you too," Jade said, and the words felt like coming home. He kissed her there on the balcony, with the city lights flickering below and the stars appearing overhead. And Jade knew, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that she had found where she belonged. 2 years after the coup, the kingdom celebrated the Midwinter Festival, a week-long event marked by feasts and tournaments and elaborate balls. Jade attended the festivities in her formal uniform, standing at Jasper's side as nobles and dignitaries paid their respects. She had grown into her role as First Shield, earning the respect even of the vampires who had initially dismissed her. She had led patrols, negotiated disputes, and once saved Jasper's life during an assassination attempt by a rogue vampire from a rival kingdom. Her reputation was formidable, her loyalty unquestioned. But she was still human, and the years were beginning to show. She was 27 now, no longer the desperate girl who had disguised herself as a boy. Fine lines had appeared at the corners of her eyes. Her hands bore scars from training and battle. Jasper, of course, looked exactly as he had the day she met him, ageless, perfect, untouched by time. It did not bother her, not usually. But tonight, surrounded by immortals who would never age, she felt the weight of her mortality more acutely than usual. After the formal reception, Jasper found her on a quiet balcony overlooking the snowy gardens. "Hiding?" he asked, amusement in his voice. "Escaping," Jade corrected. "There is a difference." He joined her at the rail, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You seem distracted tonight." "I was thinking. Again? That habit of yours will be the death of me." Jade laughed despite herself. "I was thinking about time, about how much of it you have and how little I have left." Jasper's amusement faded. "We have discussed this. I know. And I meant what I said. I do not regret staying. But I need you to understand something." She turned to face him. "I am going to age, Jasper. I am going to grow frail and weak and eventually die. And when that happens, I need to know that you will be all right. I will not be all right." His voice was rough. "Losing you will destroy me, but I will survive it because you taught me that surviving is worthwhile. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that when I am gone, you will not shut yourself away again. That you will find someone else to stand at your back. That you will let yourself care, even though it hurts." Jasper pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You are asking me to promise something I do not know if I can give. Try." Jade buried her face in his shoulder. "For me. For you," he whispered. "I will try." They stood together in the cold, holding each other against the passage of time. 8 years after the coup, Jade woke to find Jasper sitting by the window of their shared chambers, staring out at the pre-dawn sky. "You did not sleep," she said, propping herself up on one elbow. "I do not need sleep the way you do." He did not look at her, his gaze distant. Jade rose and crossed to him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. She was 33 now, and while she remained fit and strong, she felt the years in ways she had not before. Mornings were harder. Injuries took longer to heal. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Jasper was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I am thinking that I want more time with you. You have me, for as long as I live. It is not enough." He finally turned to look at her, and his expression was anguished. "Jade, I have been researching ancient texts, forbidden rituals. There are ways to extend a human life, not to make you immortal, but to give you more years, decades, perhaps even a century." Jade's breath caught. "Jasper, no, those rituals are dangerous, unpredictable. I do not care. I will not lose you before I have to. And what if the ritual goes wrong? What if I become something else, something neither human nor vampire? Would you still love me then? I would love you as anything." He took her hands, his grip almost desperate. "Please, Jade, let me try." Jade looked into his eyes and saw the fear there, the raw terror of loss. She understood it. She felt it too, every time she thought about leaving him, but she also knew that some things could not be changed. Some endings were inevitable. "No," she said gently. "I will not risk becoming a monster just to stay with you longer. I would rather have 30 more years as myself than a century as something else. 30 years is nothing. 30 years is a lifetime." She cupped his face in her hands. "And I intend to spend every moment of it with you. Is that not enough?" Jasper closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "It has to be," he said hoarsely. Jade kissed him, slow and sweet and full of promises she intended to keep. The years passed, and Jade continued to serve as first shield. She trained the next generation of guards, passing on her knowledge and her fierce dedication to justice. She stood beside Jasper through wars and peace treaties, famines and festivals. She became a fixture of the court, respected and even beloved by those who had once doubted her. And through it all, she and Jasper loved each other with a ferocity that defied time. On Jade's 40th birthday, Jasper presented her with a gift, a sword forged specially for her, the blade etched with runes of protection and strength. "It is beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the hilt. "It is practical," Jasper corrected. "You need a blade that will last as long as you do." Jade smiled. She was graying now, silver threading through her dark hair. Lines marked her face, maps of years spent laughing and fighting and living. She was no longer the young woman who had disguised herself as a boy and joined the guard. But she was happy, truly, deeply happy. "Thank you," she said, and kissed him. That night, they made love with the gentle familiarity of long practice, hands finding well-known places, bodies moving together in perfect synchrony. Afterward, they lay tangled together, Jasper's cool skin a contrast to her warmth. "I have been thinking," Jade said quietly. "Again?" She elbowed him lightly. "About the future, about what comes after." Jasper stiffened. "Jade, listen." She turned to face him. "I do not want you to mourn me forever. I want you to remember me, yes, but I also want you to keep living, to keep loving, to find joy again. There will be no joy without you. There will be, it will just take time." She traced his jaw with her fingertips. "You are a good man, Jasper, a good king, and you deserve to be happy even after I am gone." He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. "You are my happiness." "Then let me give you one more gift." Jade took a breath, steadying herself. "I want to write my oath, the one I will speak at my investiture ceremony." Jasper frowned. "You have already been invested as first shield." "I want to renew it, as myself, not the frightened girl I was, but the woman I have become." She smiled. "And I want you to accept it, knowing that it is true." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You want to reaffirm your vow." "I do, in front of the court, in front of the guards, in front of everyone. I want them to know that I choose this, that I choose you." Jasper pulled her close, his arms tight around her. "Then we will do it, at the spring festival, in the training yard, where it all began." "Thank you," Jade whispered. They held each other through the night, and when dawn came, they rose together to face another day. The spring festival arrived 3 months later. The training yard had been cleared and decorated, banners flying in the warm breeze. The entire court assembled to witness the ceremony, guards and nobles standing side by side. Jade wore her formal uniform, the sword Jasper had given her strapped to her side. Her hair, now more silver than black, was pulled back in a simple braid. She stood tall, shoulders back, every inch the warrior she had become. Jasper stood before her in his royal robes, the circlet on his brow. But his eyes were soft as he looked at her, filled with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Jade Ashford," he said, his voice carrying across the yard, "you have served as my first shield for 10 years. You have guarded my life, protected this realm, and stood beside me through trials that would have broken lesser souls. Today, I ask you to renew your oath, not because I doubt your loyalty, but because you deserve to speak the words you have written in your own voice." Jade stepped forward and knelt. The crowd fell silent. She had written the oath herself, laboring over each word until it was perfect. Now, she spoke it clearly, letting every syllable ring out. "I, Jade Ashford, swear my blade to the crown, my blood to the realm, and my life to the watch. I swear to guard the king with my strength and my cunning, to stand at his back in battle and in peace. I swear to seek justice for the wronged, to protect the innocent, and to uphold the honor of this kingdom. I swear this not out of duty, but out of love, for the king who saw me when I was hidden, for the man who gave me the chance to be myself, for the partner who stands beside me now and always. This I swear, on my life and my honor. Until my last breath, I am his shield." Her voice broke on the last words, but she did not care. She looked up at Jasper and saw tears tracking down his face, glittering like diamonds. He knelt before her, taking her hands in his. The crowd gasped. A king did not kneel, but Jasper ignored them. "And I swear to you," he said, his voice low and fierce, "that I will honor your service, that I will cherish your strength and your courage, that I will stand beside you for as long as you allow me. You are my shield, yes, but you are also my heart, and I will carry you with me always." He drew her to her feet and kissed her, there in front of the entire court. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers ringing across the yard. Jade clung to him, laughing and crying at the same time. She had come to this place a decade ago seeking vengeance, wearing a lie. And she had found something far greater. She had found herself. She had found justice. And she had found love. The years continued their inexorable march. Jade trained until her body could no longer keep pace with her mind. She served until her hands shook too badly to hold a sword, and through it all, Jasper remained beside her, his love unwavering. On her 50th birthday, Jade retired from active duty. Jasper named a new first shield, a young vampire named Kale who had trained under Jade's tutelage, but Jade remained at court, advising the guard and counseling the king. Her hair was fully silver now, her face lined with age. She walked with a cane, her knees stiff from decades of hard use, but her mind was sharp, her spirit unbroken. Jasper treated her with the same reverence he always had. He read to her when her eyes grew tired. He walked with her in the gardens, matching his pace to hers. He held her hand through the long nights when old injuries ached and sleep was elusive. "You are beautiful," he told her one evening as they sat together by the fire. Jade laughed. "I am old." "You are beautiful," he repeated. "Every line on your face is a story. Every scar is a victory. You are the most magnificent thing I have ever seen." Jade reached for his hand, her grip weak but steady. "I love you. I love you," he said, "more than I thought possible." They sat in silence, watching the flames dance, and Jade felt at peace. She lived to 63, far longer than most humans in her profession, and when the end came, it was gentle. She woke one morning to find herself too tired to rise. Jasper sent for the healers, but they could do nothing. Her body, after decades of service, was simply giving out. Jasper dismissed everyone and sat beside her bed, holding her hand. "I am not ready," he said quietly. "I know." Jade's voice was barely a whisper. "But it is time. I do not know how to let you go. You do not have to let me go. I will always be with you." She squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. "Remember your promise. Keep living. Keep loving." "I will try," he said, and she heard the anguish in his voice. "That is all I ask." Jade closed her eyes, a small smile on her lips. "Thank you, Jasper, for seeing me, for loving me, for giving me a life I never thought I could have." "Thank you," he whispered, "for teaching me to hope again." Jade's breathing slowed, and then it stopped, and Jasper sat beside her, holding her hand as the sun rose over the city they had protected together. He buried her in the royal gardens, beneath a white rose bush that bloomed year-round. Her sword was placed on the wall of the throne room, a memorial to the first shield who had served with unmatched courage. And Jasper kept his promise. He did not shut himself away. He continued to rule, to protect, to care for his kingdom. It was hard, and there were days when the grief nearly consumed him. But he endured, because she had asked him to. 50 years after Jade's death, Jasper stood in the training yard and watched the new recruits take their oaths. And he thought about a girl who had disguised herself as a boy, who had joined the guard seeking justice, who had stayed for love. She had been right, he realized. 30 years was a lifetime, and it had been enough. He carried her with him, always. In the policies he enacted to protect human settlements. In the guard he trained to serve with honor. In the quiet moments when he walked the gardens and smelled the white roses blooming, Jade Ashford had been mortal, fragile, fleeting, but her impact was eternal. And Jasper, who had lived for centuries and would live for centuries more, knew that she had been the greatest gift of his long life. He touched the locket he wore around his neck, which held a lock of her silver hair, and he smiled, a bittersweet expression full of love and loss and gratitude. "Until we meet again," he whispered to the wind. And somewhere, in the place beyond life, he liked to imagine she heard him. The kingdom thrived. The guards she had trained became legends in their own right. The policies she had helped shape brought peace and prosperity. And the story of the first shield who had served a vampire king with unwavering courage became a tale told to every new recruit, a reminder of what true loyalty looked like. Jade Ashford's legacy lived on long after her mortal life had ended. And in the heart of the immortal king who had loved her, she would never truly die. For love, once given freely and fully, is eternal. And that was enough.